Hello then! In this video we'll be reacting to part 2 of What If Dooku Stole Anakin Skywalker After Qui Gon's Death. This video is made by Pente Patrol Star Wars, so make sure to check his channel out, the links in the description, and without further ado, let's get right into the reacting. Alright, so now we'll be reacting to part 2 of What If Dooku Stole Anakin Skywalker After Qui Gon's Death. So part 1 was made by the Star Wars Galaxy, and part 2 is made by Pente Patrol. So, hey, let's get right into it.
Hello. Our story continues on the landing platform outside of Castle Sereno.
Okay.
Anakin's personal shuttle landed. It was a variant of Dooku's Solar Sailor with a different color scheme.
Okay.
He had always liked the vessel, and Dooku decided to get one for Anakin for his 14th birthday.
Cool.
Just one of those gentler
Bro,
moments
imagine getting a ship for your 13th birthday.
in their
Or
relationship.
14th, I mean.
One founded on the dark side of the Force. Dooku stood before his castle, with his hands behind his back, and a disappointed scowl drooping down his face. His eyes watched the ramp slip from the ship, and from it walked his 16...
I mean, as we ended episode 1, Dooku and Anakin are both kind of in the very confused, I don't know what the fuck to do mindset right now, you know?
year-old apprentice. Anakin walked down with haste as he noticed Dooku standing guard outside of his palace. Perhaps he had crossed the line. Anakin's eyes were firm and focused. He looked determined, frustrated, and even a bit melancholic.
Interesting.
Something felt clearly awry, but he walked up to Dooku and stopped about 4 meters away from him.
Okay.
The Count de Sereno sighed heavily, asking Skywalker where he went, and Anakin pouted, expressing that he finally found his mother.
Wow.
She was free from slavery, no thanks to him. Dooku's arms moved from behind his back to his chest as he crossed them. Perhaps Anakin was ungrateful for his way of life, for everything Dooku had done for him. This wasn't verbally said, but it was communicated through his eyes.
Yeah.
There was very heavy tension between the two of them, and all of that anger that Anakin had been taught to harness was sitting on his shoulders. It was weighing him down like a vest filled with abrax, and Dooku needed to play this carefully. There wasn't a doubt in his mind that he could best his young student, but he didn't need to...
Of course he can. I mean, he can destroy Anakin, but I don't think they're gonna do that.
destroy the relationship. It was the only thing anchoring Dooku into the light at all. Anakin was his true friend, and he needn't sever that connection. Anakin sighed heavily, telling Dooku that he had lied, before asking why did he do such a thing to him. Tyrannus expressed that there weren't lies shared. Exaggerations, perhaps, but the actions of the Jedi following the class conflict of the Corps were unforeseen. He never expected the conflict to reach such heights, and he most certainly didn't expect the Jedi Council to remove themselves from the politics of such a clash. Dooku paced to the side, telling Skywalker that he was wrong for forbidding him from seeing his mother. He watched Anakin's hand hover over his lightsaber. The color within the saber was a heavy orange. It wasn't crimson, and certainly not pure. Anakin was frustrated.
So he has the lightsaber color that we see with Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati in Ahsoka. That makes sense.
And it was because of Dooku's actions that caused his young student to become so enamored with action over patience. The tension between them continued to rise until Anakin told his father figure that he was deeply hurt. His heart was being pulled in 2 different directions, and he didn't know who to become. He believed in everything Dooku said to him growing up, but he had reached a point where he couldn't tell what was fact or fiction. His understanding of the galaxy had been spun in circles because Dooku was dead set on some sort of outcome of which Anakin was unsure of. He withheld a tear from his eye and firmed his voice, telling Dooku that he just wanted the truth. He wanted to know his purpose. In this moment, Dooku realized everything he needed to do. He had turned the Republic in on itself. He had time to correct his missteps with Anakin. He swallowed his pride, apologizing to Anakin for his failure to keep his honesty and his inability to see how deeply impactful Shmi's presence was for Skywalker. He promised Anakin that he would make right of this, for the two of them, and for the galaxy. Dooku called Anakin his son for the first time in several months, and he watched Anakin's hand release from his lightsaber as the two of them embraced. There was a long road ahead from here, but Dooku's next most important mission was to identify the next steps in Sidious's plans, so that he could properly respond.
So, I mean, I feel like Dooku and Anakin are kind of gonna be a third-party thing, you know?
Following a meal with Anakin and a discussion that helped identify missing aspects of their relationship and what could be made better, Dooku entered a meeting with his master.
Okay.
Lord Sidious had a strenuous time with the class conflict. The official name for the war within the Corps was the War Between Houses, or the House War.
Yeah,
This title came from the idea that the conflict itself originated between Palpatine and Valorum. In other words, the conflict between partisans. There was a negative reaction from the Senate, and of course, the future separatist movement was brewing under Dooku's will. The House War identified some shortfalls within the power structure of the elite class. As per Dooku's reports, the stirrings for a separatist movement had slowed down, due to a belief from many senators and representatives that the House War would return power to the people. Sidious's job at the current moment was maintaining his power and returning the galaxy and the Senate back to the state it resided in before. Tyrannus played the dumb game, acting as if he hadn't had a clue as to why the former Chancellor would instigate the conflict. During this meeting, Sidious gave Dooku information that would be necessary for the future of the coming Clone War. Being that the Clone Army was a mere 3 years away from completion, this House War gave them more room to create a larger military. Tyrannus was confused as to why, because the current status of the Corps should be extra incentive for conflict to begin anew. This, of course, was a continuation of Dooku playing dumb. As was described by Palpatine, the Senate rallied around him. The war between houses changed the entire dynamic in Coruscant politics, especially those of the Corps. The Jedi were backing away from these politics, creating a split within the council chambers themselves. There were numerous casualties from conscriptions made by the top percent to protect their interests, and the people of the galaxy voted to create a bubble around Palpatine's power to stop these elites. They didn't want Valorum to win, and being that he lost and was banished to an outer rim world without connection to the rest of the galaxy, they did what they set out to do. Sidious expressed that with more control in the Senate, he had the power to further divide those willing to join the Separatists. He noted that planets like Raxus and Onderon seemed more interested in the established longevity of the Republic. Like Dooku was informed, the House War created a sense of optimism for the future of the Republic without the oligarchs, and now Sidious wasn't considered one of them. He explained to Dooku that through this unintended House War, he had ensured his legacy within the Senate. There had already been calls to amend the Constitution so that he could become a lifelong Chancellor. The plan going forward was a slow burn confederacy.
This
the Republic would evolve to push them away anyways, especially as new elites filtered into the holes missing from the conflict. Tyrannus' directive was to maintain the status quo, try and force Mandalore's hand into joining, and continue to fund profits into the crime families of the Outer Rim. If they had any new contacts within the Jedi, continue to get into their ears. Sidious was hopeful for a new Sith order of Inquisitors and underlings that could serve their bidding. Dooku understood and prepared to move forward with his new directive.
I mean, now Dooku's getting all of Sidious's plans, so Sidious is pretty fucked, to be honest.
With 2 new instructions, Dooku needed to come up with a necessary plan of attack going forward. Thanks to really hashing things out with Anakin, he was able to determine that his focus for the Separatist movement couldn't be founded in the enforcement he initially planned to go with. The CIS military could be all battle droids, but he couldn't acquire them and utilize them through a Separatist council of business conglomerates. A big reason for this was the fact that Palpatine was now irreplaceable. Dooku's quest for a noble victory over the Republic also came with a need to usurp his master politically. This transformed into Dooku's slow rescind of his use of the dark side of the Force. And how he transferred that down to Anakin.
That's cool.
He instructed the student to use a light in harmony with the dark, something along the lines of what Qui Gon would have instructed, but still a bit darker.
Mace Windu type shit?
Anakin slowly reflected what his master instructed him. But there was one unsung quality of Anakin that started to shine in his late teens. With need to change the direction of the Confederate movement altogether, Dooku needed his intelligent son to use his political mind to help garner help from future Separatist allies. Aside from lessons in the Force, Dooku taught Anakin a very intense course on galactic politics. And perhaps the best thing Dooku did during this instruction was to teach Anakin to think for himself. In his mind, it was further proof that he actually loved the boy, because if he didn't, then it would show he had little respect for Anakin, depicting a relationship that was more akin to slavery, and this was not that. After fully making amends at the age of 16, and freeing Shmi and the Lars from Tatooine,
Oh.
Anakin would begin working full-time as a representative for Sereno. He'd be listed
Okay,
officially
damn.
as a nephew, named Koyos Dooku.
Koyos
It was
Dooku.
a way to remove Anakin from any suspicion from Sidious or the Jedi, being that up until this point, Anakin had a very seclusive life.
Yeah.
Across the galaxy, as Tyrannus and his nephew, Koyos Dooku, moved out to begin their rebuilt separatist movement, the Jedi were facing their own harsh reality.
Okay.
Since the House War, tensions had been high. Master of the Order Mace Windu struggled immensely with the outbreak of the class conflict. The casualty count was unknown, but it was an estimated 2.1 million people dead, none of which needing to die.
Yeah.
Mace had become
Wait.
outspoken against
How many people?
people dead, none of which was
Oh.
unknown, but it was an estimated 2.1 million people
Damn. 2.1 million people dead. I mean, for a galactic war, that's not a lot, but still, 2.1 million people, yeah.
dead, none of which needing to die.
Yeah, exactly.
Mace had become outspoken against the Republic since the House War, and the Council slowly divided over it. In the current session, Mundi, leader of the Republic Loyalist Committee, within the Council and the Order as
Of course,
a
this dickhead is a oh my.
whole, proposed the excommunication of Mace Windu, and his former student Depa Billaba, and even Peel, for
What?
the decision to stand against the Jedi Order. This completely shocked many of the Council, but there was genuine basis in Mundy's mind. His committee
Please kick this fucker out of the Jedi Order right now.
was an actually formed coalition within the
Kidding me.
temple. Mace's quote-unquote outbursts made him a repugnant and irritation to the forward movement of the council.
Okay, bro.
His decision to disrupt sessions and cause a ruckus was all the more reason for Mundy's decision.
No,
He saw these individuals as rebels to the current system. Their actions were potentially damning to
he's the fucking master of the Order, and you're just some penis head. All right, no, stop this.
relationship with the Republic. While Mundy had his distrust for the Chancellor, he also believed the Republic was the firm body the Jedi needed.
Shut up, man.
Excommunicating Mace Windu, Depa Billaba, and even Peel would allow the Council to appoint more Republic-loyal members, while also establishing a message to
All right, so now you're just making the Jedi Order corrupt. Okay.
others
Cool.
that followed the path of these rebels.
Cool. Of course this
Mace
dickhead is
would
doing
opt
that.
to go quietly,
Fucking Qui
seeing how
Gon.
Yoda looked like he couldn't make a decision on who to support.
Oh my Yoda, for fuck's sakes. Why do you have to be green, useless gremlin and sit there without saying anything? You're a Grand Master, and you just fucking let this happen? In this moment, you're fucking disappointment, bro.
Depa and Even would follow in Mace's footsteps. And while the Jedi Schism didn't follow immediately after, the banishment of the Master of the Order and the two other counselors
No.
would be the first step in the Great Jedi Divide to come.
That is unacceptable.
Because Representative Koyos was working on behalf of the Count to rein in more separatist allies, it elicited Dooku more time to craft his own
That
plan.
is actually
In
unacceptable.
an effort to maintain the status quo with Sidious and the need for a separatist military, he needed to find a more noble path to creating the CIS. If he wanted to truly be better than the Republic, then there was no need for corporations. However, Sidious would know something was awry if Tyrannus didn't specifically work with these people. It had been negotiated following the blockade over Naboo, that Gunray and
man.
Tambor and the other major talking heads would become influences in the separatist movement. The next 6 years of Dooku's and Anakin's lives would revolve around the establishment of the Clone War. Thanks in part to the House War, conflict wouldn't naturally bubble into a galactic divide for another few years. It was in these years that Dooku was able to make the actual separatist government independent militaristically from the CIS Council.
Okay.
These conglomerate heads had a lot of power and influence, but in his quest to handle the CIS with pure intentions, as he had initially set out to do when he joined the Sith, he found that to truly have the pure government he wanted, there needed to be funding. This was especially difficult to get from a government that was forming based off of freedom from the Republic. They wanted their independence, not another conflict.
Yeah.
The House War had already shown them a taste of what combat could do to people. So, Dooku had to bend his makeshift moral code to make it work. If he didn't
Okay.
want to have a CIS council and also have a standing military, he needed to fund it. People were not going to fund this conflict willingly, so he had to meet individually with the crime families.
Wow.
His intention was to allow them to set up racketeering outposts across the separatist movement.
Damn.
It would hurt the little man, but in his mind, he'd be able to stomp it out eventually. Essentially, his promise was protection for the crime families within the Confederacy of Independent
interesting.
Systems. It would be a quiet and underground work, and in return, they would fund the Separatist military, which would lead to protection, this lasting until the war came to a close. Dooku very specifically made sure the crime families bought in for this joint operation, so that he could destroy the Republic and the Syndicate stench in one go. It would cost him 3 to 4 years of frustration and moral anguish, but it would result in a more prosperous galaxy in his mind.
Imagine, I don't know.
A trusting outer rim, one that could be a part of the Confederacy after the war.
Trusting the crime syndicate stuff. I don't know, man. I don't know about that.
And in return, their enslavers would be vanquished in one swift blow. It would effectively become one of the largest movements to strip corruption from the galaxy and establish a new order in the shadow of the destroyed Republic. These few years, up until 19 BBY, were necessary to build a strong coalition. It really benefited everyone, especially young Skywalker. While working under the pseudonym of Koyos,
Whoa. 19B, that's when the war ended, though.
he met the young political aide to the Senator of Onderon. She was an individual like him, very politically active and intelligent. Due to his upbringing with Dooku, Anakin was able to talk to her on a macro, micro, and eventually
Is he still gonna fucking find Padme, though?
intimate level.
Okay.
He understood
So,
the delicacies
no Padme.
of interacting with the royalties and political powerhouses of the galaxy. Phoebe was her name, and like Dooku, that was both her first and her last. The two of them worked hard on creating a deal to bring Onderon into the Confederacy.
Okay.
It was a foundation of their relationship, because they had strong communication, and they were able to find common ground to benefit everyone involved. Due to both of their ridiculous schedules in their early 20s, they had to reserve their time to hollow communications.
Okay.
But that didn't pull them away from each other. It was actually due to this connection that Anakin was able to reveal his real name, and she found it quite charming. The thrill of mystery and whatnot. Outside of romantic connections from the lovely Onderon system, Anakin and Dooku were reaching a point of no return. The Republic was getting frustrated with the popularity of the Confederacy. Cities could see the rising waves of hostility, but instead of Dooku being the aggressor, as had been planned, the Senate was going to force Palpatine's hand. He would have to instigate the war instead of let it come to him. And he had a massive clone army of over 5 million units, and 1 million more well on the way.
Okay, so the clone army has definitely been made a lot bigger.
The Confederacy was much larger, and there would be no neutral systems coalition, due to tensions on Mandalore between the new leadership and Death Watch. Yet there was one side quest that had left Anakin confused. It was truly just that, a side quest. Because between eclipsing Dooku's own power, bringing new allies into the Confederacy, and Jedi drama, it was a really bizarre mission. But in 21 BBY, Dooku started having visions of a Zabrak warrior, and so Anakin was sent to Dathomir to find the one his father had mentioned, but he never found.
Did he have visions of Maul or Savage?
Anyone that matched the description. It earned Anakin a battle scar above his eye, and it also earned the Zabraks who did it a couple busted bones.
Oh, nice.
Regardless, in 19 BBY, the war started. General Grievous had died of his injuries, due to his accident happening later than initially planned. Asajj Ventress found home with the Separatists and with Dooku, but she was relegated to an assassin in the Outer Rim. Her fight wasn't with the Jedi, because their drama had bubbled out. To match the House War, there was the Jedi Schism, which only proved how disconnected the Order was from the galaxy. By the time of the Clone Wars, about half of the Jedi Order had abandoned Coruscant, following Masters Windu, Balaba, and Peel on a journey to reclaim their position in the galaxy. They would respond to the inferno started by the Republic. The battle that truly started the Clone War would be a Jedi-led operation. Master Coleman Trebor and Yariel Poof
dinosaur boy who's incompetent as hell,
leading a task force into Confederate territory, with a group of clones that had been handed over to the Jedi via a Kaminoan distress signal. It was a whole thing, but it led to the Jedi getting a hold of the clone army before the conflict started. Palpatine sent the Jedi and the clones into the CIS system of Stujon, and a conflict escalated.
Stujon? That's literally where Obi-Wan's from. Oh shit, okay.
Clones fired on revolting citizens after a rock was thrown or a shot was fired. Something that no one could figure out what actually started it. But all anyone knew was that the Jedi and their armored warriors killed off a bundle of civilians. The worst part is, the Jedi actually tried to stop it, but it looked like they were encouraging it.
Yes, but they're incompetent as fuck, so yeah, the They try to stop it, but they're stupid. They fell for a... They're just dumb.
Because there were some communication issues between the clones and the Jedi that hadn't been ironed out yet. A total mistake caused the eruption of the Clone War. Now, on Dooku's side, he maintained a healthy relationship with a CIS council that had absolutely no influence within the Confederacy. He used his relationship for personal finances, because the council wasn't going to give him troops, but he exploited the business side of the conglomerates. Long-term plans were to fill his pockets, and then pass it out to those who actually needed it. Of course, some would go to his son, but he didn't want the CIS Council anywhere near the status of the government for the Confederacy, or it could jeopardize their legitimacy, whereas the racketeering allowed by the syndicates was a much more micro issue, one that could be covered up. It was all a risk on his part, but it allowed the Clone Wars to go on regularly. Essentially, Dooku's plan was to fund the CIS military through the syndicates, not the CIS Council. With less units available than he would have had otherwise because he had to pay for it, the Clone Wars started off like an actual war. It was forced to be, due to how the actual Senate encouraged Palpatine to wage war. So both Tyrannus and Sidious had something at stake here. Dooku's noble confederacy and Palpatine's dreams of an empire. There was little need for Order 66, and while it still could be used, Palpatine nearly had all the power he needed to make himself emperor. Yet there was still something pulling at Sidious's heart. He could sense that there was some sort of issue brewing with his apprentice. He believed it was stemming from Asajj. And let's be clear, he definitely saw Koya's Dooku out and about. He never met him directly, and there were clear records showing Koyus was a real person born under House Dooku. So Palpatine's assumption that Ventress was causing these stirrings seemed more the cause than anything else. Palpatine's initial reaction was to have her killed, but as Sidious needed proof of loyalty, and having Dooku kill her wasn't good enough. He instead would snoop around until his answer became clear. Sidious's focus was becoming emperor. There was always something to benefit from, and he would find out what it was here. Battles during the Clone War would be 10 times larger than ever imaginable. The House conflict from the previous decade gave time for armies to grow larger, and that military was the Grand Army of the Republic. With the Confederacy utilizing less militaristic assets, it gave the much larger clone force a chance to strike down the CIS planets with relative ease. This wasn't a Defense Republic unit, it was offensive. But the great surprise that came from such an intense blitz was the additional forces joining the Confederacy. Mace Windu's Jedi Reformist group joined on behalf of the CIS, as they had
Whoa, that's actually fucking epic. That's actually fucking epic. Oh my god, Pente Patrol, bro, that's epic.
promised they would years before. There were other counselors who had joined them by this point, but they were spread out, working arduously to protect the galaxy.
Wow.
This led to Jedi within the Republic to not want to fight, causing rebel Jedi to flee the Order in pursuit of their own peace. Other members of the Jedi Order refused to fight altogether, and the few who continued following the Republic went to war against their own brothers and sisters.
Wow.
The reformist Jedi were willing to fight for the heart of the galaxy, and they stood their ground against the oppressive regime that became the Republic, and Standing Jedi Order of Coruscant. Dooku was relieved to have his brother Mace Windu with him again, and as for Anakin, he was able to fully understand what a true Jedi was. Qui Gon was a good inspiration, but who these reformists became was all the hope Anakin needed. While he was prepared enough for combat and for fighting against the hordes of clones, Dooku became sort of overprotective of his son.
I see.
The Skywalker Lars family was completely safe on Sereno, so there was no need to have Anakin gallivanting off into war. The battle droids and Jedi were fighting. His goal was to be prepared in case he needed to fight. This created a tense relationship for the two of them, but Anakin was able to understand why he was being restricted through a conversation he had with Shmi. No need to make Anakin's mother, father, or partner worried. His trust in those around him led to him remaining comfortably on Sereno and assisting in mercy missions,
That's cool.
a few of which he would reunite with Phobie on. They found great interest in helping people. It was ingrained into both of them, and it's why especially Phobie became a public servant. Battle after battle clobbered the galaxy. Planets faced ruin, cities reduced to rubble, towns leveled, and populations left in terror. In a weird way, the established racketeering business from the crime families helped Dooku funnel resources into damaged zones. It wasn't that their criminal practices were good, it was that they were able to stay afloat, because their funding didn't come from in-planet. It came from the crime families, and they profited off of the weak and off the powerful.
Right, yeah.
Dooku elegantly used their resources to help people affected by the war, which again showed the difference between the Count and the Chancellor, but the engagements only continued to intensify. Sidious, though, caught on to the ruse, and decided that his best play was to drag this out. He brought in new bounty hunters, paid off numerous politicians, and did everything within his power to try and prepare the perfect exposure of who Dooku was. But the more credits he funded into his slandering campaign of Dooku, the more he realized it'd be pretty inefficient. The bubble his apprentice created around himself made him pretty untouchable, especially when compared to the outright total war led by Palpatine himself. A smear campaign wasn't good enough, so Dooku and Asajj would have to be killed. Sidious needed to be careful with the way he executed this plot.
Well, I don't know, man, because we got Dooku and Asajj, and there's Anakin.
He had been informed of a reserve military in the Separatist arsenal, as a part of their plans, in case things fell through. What he didn't know is that was a complete bluff. There was no true Separatist reserve military. It didn't exist. Tyrannus had lied, and now Sidious was wary of a potential situation in which Dooku did die, and these reserve forces were released by the young and hungry Koyos, assuming that the Count's nephew would be anywhere near as aggressive as Dooku was. It's not that Sidious didn't try to remove Skywalker from the picture. It was the fact that he was always being watched and protected, whether Anakin knew it or not. Sometimes a bounty hunter like Cad Bane would watch over Anakin, while he always had a Magna Guard unit and a couple other battle droids to protect him. It's also why Phoebe and Anakin rarely met up, because Dooku feared that if she was seen with Anakin, she could also be targeted. The tether that kept Dooku grounded in the light became his entire basis for returning to it. In a way, he had adopted Mace Windu's method of the Force. It wasn't as elegant as Windu's Vapad, because no one was as elegant with it as Mace, but it was his own interpretation, one that slowed his rapid aging, one that benefited his own physical and mental health, and one that allowed him to remain in peak fighting form. This was aided by training sessions with his much younger son. Anakin at 24 was faster, stronger, and more acrobatic, but speed and strength do not equate to mastery and experience. Despite eclipsing his father in power, there was much more for young Skywalker to learn. At a midpoint in the war, after Corellia seceded from the Republic and Grandmaster Yoda died in a conflict at Baz Pitti...
Bro. This galaxy is going to shit. Yoda died. Yoda. And oh my god, Corellia, fucking one of the main worlds of the Republic. I mean, Corellia is where the fleet is made. And that joins the Separatists. Fucking hell.
The Sith Lord made his move.
It's insane.
With the war in gridlock and fear that more systems could secede into the Confederacy, Palpatine made a move to Sereno, so that he could extinguish Dooku and Asajj in one swift blow. When he arrived, his shuttle descended like the Angel of Death in the darkness of night. His robes fluttered and his scaly hands wrapped around his sabers like poison. Darth Sidious, the powerful, marched across the courtyard outside of Castle Sereno. Anakin was on a call with his partner when he felt a rising chill and told Phoebe that he would return, leaving his hologram on as he exited the room. Anakin was wide awake, as he and his partner were deep in another political and sociological conversation. Just kidding. They were playing a game with each other and deeply invested in beating the snot out of a kid from Alderaan for trash-talking with the stacked team.
Oh, of course Anakin would be doing that.
Anakin stepped lightly into the corridor and pulled his lightsaber off the wall and into his hand with the Force. He moved lightly against the floors, and he saw a shadow bounce past the window of moonlight that lit the chambers. He closed his eyes and could sense where his opponent stood. He asked who was there. The individual seemed confused. Why was Dooku's nephew here right now? Official records stated that he lived in a small town on the third continent, far from here on Sereno.
He doesn't.
Sidious told the boy that he could live to be his pet, if he just stepped aside so that he may...
How the fuck would that persuade anyone? Yeah, you can be my pet, bro. What the fuck, Sidious? You're stupid.
...slay his uncle. Anakin's fist grabbed the lightsaber, igniting a no longer orange blade, but a blue one. He told...
Let's be honest, though. I still don't think I don't think. He's not a match for Sidious, even with all of the training and all the shit, you know?
Sidious that his father's honor would not be desecrated by someone deserving less than the fodder eaten by the Hutts. Sidious released the word father in a questioning tone, before realizing that Dooku's treachery started with a nephew, one who was killed in the Jedi Temple more than a decade before. The legacy of the Chosen One had been tainted by Dooku, and now both he and Tyrannus would pay. Sidious's sabers ignited, 2 crimson blades ringing out from his sleeves as he launched himself across the chambers. Anakin readied himself and slammed forward, connecting on first strike. Thanks to Dooku's decision to cement himself in the light side of the Force, he was able to train Anakin with more ferocity. Sidious was monstrous with his first few strikes, their weapons speedily marching across the chambers, lighting up the dark room with red and blue. Anakin ducked around, clashing overhead and gripping Sidious's wrist with his open hand.
Ooh.
He twisted Palpatine's hand under their still holding strike, before slipping back and slamming a counter into the ground. Skywalker tilted his body, using the floor and his bare feet to move swiftly away from his opponent's double strikes. Sidious hadn't realized his young opponent's disadvantage, but Anakin had been trained in a number of ways, and fighting in bare feet wasn't something he was unprepared for. Sidious drove his saber forward, and his jab slammed right into the tip of Anakin's blade, creating an odd ringing sensation. Anakin leapt backwards and landed, using the Force to push Sidious backwards, but he braced himself. When he looked up, Anakin was hiding in the darkness. Funnily enough, Palpatine was molded by the darkness. However, Skywalker still got the jump on his older opponent. Sidious blocked behind his head and swung back around, narrowly missing Anakin's face. As their duel heated up again, Dooku emerged from his chambers, wearing...
See, now Sidious is fucked. Cause Dooku alone here still wouldn't be a match for Dooku. I mean, Dooku alone here would not be a match for Sidious. Anakin alone, no. But them together, they can take Sidious at this point.
in his pajamas and blasting electricity down from the balcony.
His pajamas.
Sidious to turn back after shoving Anakin away from a nearly lethal blow. He defended the lightning as Dooku landed on the ground before him, telling his master that he should not have come here. Sidious grinned in the darkness and lunged in, attacking Dooku, whose blade still wore a crimson tint. Was this loyalty to darkness or a genuine preferred choice? Sidious didn't know. It was the latter, actually, as Dooku quickly moved in, his speed and even youthfulness surprising Sidious. But he responded with quick reaction. Their blades connected, parrying, striking, and dodging. Anakin moved in, joining Dooku, just as they had trained for. This was the engagement to end all. Sidious defended himself perfectly. Father and son pressed their sabers against the Sith Lord, who pulled both of them in towards him and leapt over them, blasting electricity back at his two opponents. Skywalker stepped in front of Dooku, blocking the electricity, which was incredibly overbearing. The strength pushed Anakin and his bare feet across the slick floors of the palace.
Bro, sliding.
Dooku, wearing his official Sith slippers, darted around his boy.
I can't, bro. Official Sith slippers?
Slashing down towards Sidious, who anticipated Dooku's move. However, Dooku knew that Sidious would switch targets, and his decision to swing down redirected the electricity storm back at the Sith Lord, who was shocked instantly. Anakin pressed his foot against the wall, and used it to launch himself at Palpatine, and with a single swing, cut through both of Sidious's hands, rendering him defenseless. He fell backwards and he stumbled. Anakin, who was in the ground after leaping and falling in style, jabbed Sidious in the calf. This forced the Sith Lord to buckle to his knees, constraining him to kneel before Tyrannus. Dooku stood over Sidious and told his former teacher that the Sith died on his breath, and it would be with his death that the new order the galaxy needed could be born. He jabbed Sidious in the pec, telling him that it was a movement for the galaxy. Another jab, for the people. Dooku thrust his saber into Sidious's stomach, and told him that this was for Qui Gon. And all those millions of lives lost for pointless conflict. He ripped the blade out, and Sidious heaved in agony. His head was removed with a vicious strike from Dooku's blade. They couldn't see it, but they heard the Sith Lord's head roll and the body that fell afterwards. Dooku told Anakin to return to his room. He would handle this from here. And Anakin listened. He'd have to explain the story to Phoebe, as they absolutely wrecked that gamer from the core before going to bed.
I can't, bro. Pente Patrol has such a way of putting in, random humor in his what-ifs without even acknowledging it. I love it.
She was just glad to hear that Anakin was alright. And he was too, quite frankly. The aftermath of Sidious's death would leave the Republic in a fight-or-flight mode. With Jedi Master Ki-Adi-Mundi taking the reins of the Council, he proposed a proper joining between the Republic and the Jedi Order.
Ki-Adi-Mundi is the leader of the Jedi Order. Yeah, the Jedi Order is just cooked and doomed right now.
In the absence of Palpatine, leadership was needed, especially leadership that could and would win the war. He believed in the Jedi Order, and he believed in the Republic.
Well, nobody believes in
while
you,
more rogue
dickhead.
Jedi who abandoned both the Coruscant Order and refused to join the Reformist Order went deeper into the galaxy. The Standing Order of Coruscant pressed for control in the Republic.
Okay.
They actually got it, because the Senate was desperate. When Anakin woke up following his victory over Sidious, Dooku would have changed everything. He set in stone the beginning of the 3-month plan, in hopes to clean up what he had started with the syndicates. The first step in his plan would be utilizing the executive orders to turn the clone army against the Republic. It would absolutely decimate their morale.
Oh, wow.
And it would send their politicians running. Anakin and Phoebe were able to openly spend more time together, especially in relief efforts sponsored by the Confederacy.
Very interesting.
In a joint effort between Dooku, Windu, and the CIS government, they would publicly unite to show strength in numbers. The message would be of new order, of coming change, and of what was to come. The clones continued fighting without a government. The shell of the Republic would be held together by a warring faction that kept getting supplied by the Kaminoan cloning facilities. Once Topoka City was sunk to the bottom of the ocean by a separatist attack, it led to the beginning of the end for the Republic. It would take about a full year to force every clone division to fully surrender. Their pride was at stake, but Dooku, due to a request from Anakin, promised them peace and freedom. As the separatist military continued to fight against Republic High Command, Dooku's own forces were marching down the throats of the crime syndicates in the Outer Rim, and ravaging through the CIS Council that was maintained for the status quo with Sidious. But there was something Dooku could have never prepared for him. Despite the surface-level conflict with the Outer Rim forces looking to be a success, they had aligned and prepared their own counter.
Very interesting.
This was all initiated by Jabba the Hutt. He agreed to unify with the Confederacy because of the long-term success it offered. Being over 100 years old offered him experience with political-like types, such as Dooku. He knew that at one point or another, Dooku would betray them, and even if he didn't, they would have established bases of operation for the future. Because of this, Jabba was content with these racketeering and other criminal businesses that could operate on the underground level and help fund the CIS, especially in the circumstance that they were betrayed by Dooku, which they were. It gained the syndicates millions of extra credits, and despite their home bases like Tatooine, Zygeria, Ord Mantell, Obadiah, and Nal Hutta being hit with battle droids, the collective syndicates unified under a separate branch they called the Void. All the military forces, leadership, resources...
I think I know where this is heading. In part 3, in Fantasy Folklore's video, we'll see the war being waged on against the crime syndicates, and, you know, something about the Jedi, because, well, they're being led by Kiari Dickhead right now, so...
Credits were spent taking them from their home worlds into more defensible secret locations along the outer edge of the galaxy.
Interesting.
With direct influence in the growing galactic government following the war, they would have their chance at maintaining a power dynamic under Dooku's nose, while he focused on more pressing matters in the new system. The Void had a chance to create a criminal empire that could block out the light of the rising change that was the Confederacy.
Oh, that's not
This
good.
was all the brainchild of Jabba the Hutt, an individual trying to maintain a criminal empire that his son could inherit upon the right age. Despite these dark tidings for the future Confederacy with the Void, the current one was celebrating. When they finally defeated the Republic outside of Kuat, the galaxy let out a sigh of relief. The enemy of the people was destroyed, and while many people disagreed with Dooku's and the Confederacy's decision to give the clones a chance at life, it led to a more understanding society in the coming future. On Sereno, Anakin and Phoebe would be uniting through matrimony, as the war and distance from one another had tested them greatly. Their marriage would be relatively public, and it would be something the Void was very, very aware of. Everything done by Dooku was known by the Void. Anakin and Phoebe would have a lovely wedding in the courtyard of the palace, and it would be celebrated across the Confederacy. Among those present were Mace Windu and Jedi Representative Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yes, Obi-Wan!
With his second apprentice, Gunji. Kenobi's place as Jedi Representative was to speak on behalf of the Jedi with the government, but to also act as a guide for Jedi far and wide. He was here for Dooku, and to meet Anakin, the Jedi he was meant to train. Outside of the lovely wedding, Obi-Wan's work would consist of saving lost Jedi, whether they be individuals from the Coruscant Order or rogues. He'd bring them home to Tython, where they could be trained and become true Jedi, under the new banner of the Order. But that therein lay the biggest challenge for Jedi ambassadors and representatives. There were hundreds of rogue Jedi in the galaxy, one so disheartened by the schism by the Republic, and even by the Reformists, that they decided to forge their own path, some through light, others through darkness. The public marriage was a symbol of the binding between the former Republic and the Confederacy, and the protection of clone rights symbolized the decision made by the CIS to be a caring government. This was Dooku's chance to herald in the change he wanted to see in the galaxy.
Wow.
And with Skywalker and Phoebe by his side, they were ready to face the challenges that came with instating a new regime for the people to thrive under. The galaxy was ready, and while darkness lurked, there was hope on the horizon. The sun was rising, and the change they desired to so desperately create sat beautifully in their hands. And that, my friends, is part 2 to
Holy shit! Oh, that was good. That was good. That's getting a 10 out of 10. Just like the Star Wars Galaxies Part 1, Part 2 by Pente Patrol is getting 10 out of 10. And tomorrow, we will react to what's on the screen right now. What if Dooku stole Anakin Skywalker after Qui Gon's death? Part 3, which is made by Fantasy Folklore. I'm very excited for that. So yeah, 10 out of 10. Let me know what you guys think about this what if in the comment section down below. Whether you agree with my 10 out of 10 rating or if you don't, and why. Of course, if you do disagree, I don't know what is wrong with you because, wow, this was just great.
And that is it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy this reaction, make sure to subscribe to Pente Patrol Star Wars for more awesome what if content. And do not forget to subscribe to my channel, leave a like, and turn on those notifications so you never miss an upload. Remember that we react to a Star Wars what if every single day other than Fridays. Also, if you want to support the channel and get exclusive perks, consider joining our Patreon. And please do make sure to join our Discord server. The link is in the description. And the links do now officially work, which is very, very, very nice. And yeah, that is pretty much it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. This is the way, and may the Force be with you. Until then, I will see you next time.
Hey, you didn't watch it? Well, check out the video on the left side of the screen, which is specifically recommended for you, or check out the playlist on the right of the screen, which contains similar videos to this one, made by me, of course. Hey, remember, subscribe.